Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey peeps, today we're going to take a look at Karuba from Haba Games. This is one of Haba Games' family line of games, as opposed to most of their games are specifically children-oriented. This one is for all ages. Very sort of basic games, but enough there for gamerly gamers, I would say. And in particular, what Karuba is about, each player takes control of a group of adventurers who are going through a jungle on an unexplored island, trying to find these temples that have, I guess if there's temples there, they're not totally unexplored. Whatever. There's temples that have treasures that give you points, and along the way you might find crystals and gold that fall off of the crystal and gold trees. And essentially, mechanically speaking, it's a tile-laying game and route building, in a sense. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played. It's actually pretty simple. And then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think.
Karuba is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. You take control of a team of adventurers that are trudging through a jungle island to find treasure and temples. You need to put jungle tiles out to accomplish this. The goal is to have the most points at the end of the game, and the end occurs when either all 36 jungle tiles have been run through, or when one player has reached all 4 temples. Every player gets an island board, a set of adventurers in 4 colors, and a set of temples in matching 4 colors. You and the other players will take turns placing an adventurer on one of the numbers on the beach, followed by placing the matching temple on one of the numbers in the jungle. There must be at least 3 numbers worth of distance between their relative positions. When it's your turn to place an adventurer temple set, the other players will follow suit, matching your placement exactly. The end result is that every player's island board will be set up in the exact same way. You also get a set of 36 jungle tiles, which are the same on the face for each player, but the backs are different colors. One player will be randomly chosen to be the expedition leader, and will randomize their stack of tiles, shuffling them and leaving them face down in front of her. The other players will lay out the tiles face up around their island, in order, so that they have easy access to them. The last bit of setup involves the temple treasures. There should be 4 stacks of treasures, matching the colors of the temples, in point values of 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you'll stack them in descending order in the middle of the table. However, if you have 2 or 3 players, you will not use the 2s and the 4s, respectively. Then the game begins. The goal here is twofold. Get your adventurers to the temples of the matching color, and along the way, possibly pick up crystals and gold. The expedition leader will start each turn of the game by taking the random top tile off of her stack and clearly reading the number on it. Each other player will find the matching tile laying near their board. Then, all players simultaneously will have to do something with that tile. You have 2 options. No one is bound by the other player's actions, and each player can take their turn differently, meaning the islands will all look very different eventually, but it all happens at the same time. The first option is to lay the tile out on your own island. It can be placed in any empty field, but you must orient it so that the number is in the top left-hand corner. Each tile has paths with either 2, 3, or 4 openings. Dead ends are fine to create, but ultimately what you want to do is connect paths that will get the adventurer meeples to their matching temples. If the tile everyone is placing has a crystal or gold piece depicted on it, each player will take one of the matching physical pieces and place it onto the tile after it's been placed. Instead of doing that, the second option for the tile that you draw is to simply discard it and move one of your adventurers. That adventurer will move 2, 3, or 4 spaces depending on the number of path openings depicted on the discarded tile. The adventurer can only move along paths, and you can only move one at a time. To take a crystal or gold piece, the adventurer must stop and end their movement on a space containing the treasure. Then, you get to keep it for points at the end of the game. Crystals are worth 1 point, and gold is worth 2 points. If, however, an adventurer reaches the temple that matches their color by moving onto it, they automatically gain the highest value remaining treasure tile of that color. Other players who get there later on will have to take the remaining treasure that's going to be worth less points. When the end of the game is reached by running through all the tiles or having someone reach all 4 temples themselves, you'll simply count up all points from temple treasures, gold nuggets, and crystals that you were able to obtain. Whoever has the most points is the winner.
Karuba is a very clever, fun little game. It's actually interesting. The thing I thought the most while I was playing it and then afterwards was that it's such a clean design, which I think I've heard a lot of people say that and it probably gets overused. But when I'm used to playing so many games that are just tons and tons of bits and bits of plastic and miniatures and all kinds of rules and just page after page after page after page of rules that are really dense, I'm not complaining about that. There's certainly a place for very complicated, heavily strategic games. But then to kind of back off from that and play a game that is just very straightforward was kind of refreshing. And this one is, I could see some people making the argument that this is a bit too straightforward. It is meant to be a family game, which means it's very simple to learn, very simple to play, fast to set up, all of these different things. And there's definitely strategy here, but it's perhaps not the most like brain-burning type thing. But you can definitely get caught up in a bit of analysis paralysis or brain burn because just trying to, especially if you're trying to go for like all 4 temples, like how am I going to do this? Okay, if I put this here and I'm looking at the board and I'm doing all the math, like oh, how likely is it that this tile is going to come up and when is it going to come up? Because that's very important. So there's more going on in this game than initially meets the eye, despite how simple it is. The game looks nice. I like the design of it, the graphic design and the components and the bits. Again, there's not a ton of stuff here, but I think what there is done well. The game does set up easily. The whole thing where one player shuffles up the tiles and is the leader, and the other players have to lay them all out is kind of fiddly. But it's not a huge deal. I mean, you just have to in fact, you don't even have to lay them out like that, like I had them in the overview. That's just for simplicity's sake because it's kind of a bingo type thing. So the easier it is for the other players to get to the tiles that the leader names, the better. But that's the one bit of fiddliness in the game that is slightly annoying, but not even that much. It's interesting that you can have a different setup for the game. The players can cooperatively sort of decide how to set up the island, and everyone has the same island. That's an interesting little thing, and we did that for the last couple of games that we played, but I don't know, I can't see too much of the strategy there, because people just end up saying, oh, okay, this one's fine, this one's fine. I'm sure there's layers of strategy there that I didn't see, but it is interesting that you can have a variable setup like that. And there's a nice like chase in this game, like who's going to get to the temples first, get the most points. You have options because you know what, temples are fine. There's gold here too. If I don't feel like I'm going to get to this temple in time to get the most points out of it, I don't want to pass up the chance to get this gold if we're running out of tiles. That's the sort of urgency that this game instills in you because you get down to it's getting closer and closer. You see that stack winding down. You see all of your tiles evaporating around you depending on who you are in the game. And you're like, I gotta get to it. I gotta really figure out what I'm gonna do here. Am I gonna make a go for it, or am I just going to settle for getting as many crystals and gold as I can and maybe get 1 or 2 temples? So, again, simple game, but there's decision making there, and I think that's very important. If I had one thing that I think is kind of a sin of omission, it would just be that there's not really anything for the particular, like, it seems like since there's different colored adventurers, and they even had the trouble of having artwork on the board, maybe giving them special powers would have been a cool thing. That's probably above and beyond. But if they ever did an expansion, I'd be interested to see different things happen with the different explorers or different adventurers behaving in certain ways, the meeples. That might have been an interesting thing, but I think that was probably above this game's pay grade, to say it in a weird way, because it's just supposed to be very straightforward. So, all in all, fun game. I was quite surprised by how much I liked it. I thought it would be a little bit too simple for me, but I think there's enough there, and I do think it's definitely a great game for families. It's a great next step up game, I would say, from really simple games like Haba tends to produce. That's probably why they decided this one would be perfect for their wheelhouse, because it is that next step. That is Karuba from Haba Games. Quite like it.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.